Hello, my name is Claire Gilman, and I'm a curator and writer living in New York.
I'm Emily Nam. We are art people.
I do feel like when I am curating, I am making an artwork in a certain sense. I do feel that the show is itself a work of art, and that's very important to me. That the show as a whole have an aesthetic. That people can have an aesthetic appreciation of the show, not just of the individual works that they're looking at, and that the show is there to complement those works, not to upstate, in any way. It's so not that the work is the most important thing. It is also putting an experience together that translates and kind of moves people.
In today's conversation, I've been privileged to speak with Claire Gilman, Acquavella Curator and Department Head of Modern and Contemporary Drawings at the Morgan Library in New York City. Claire's trajectory as a curator of drawings has included her role as the Chief Curator at the Drawing Center, fostering the eclectic presentation of artist and conceptual exhibitions grounded in exploring new ways of what drawing is and what drawing can do. This has included A Greater Beauty, the drawings of Khalil Gibran in 2013 and Tommy Ungura all in one in 2015, as well as the works of established artists such as Cecily Brown and Rashid Johnson. We discuss the power of drawings and the process of revealing a work to the public, the importance of being prepared, and the process of research in acquainting oneself with the artist behind the work. In her recent appointment at the Morgan Library, Claire faces the exciting challenge of how to bring a contemporary voice to an institution that is steeped in tradition. Through Claire's expertise, she is enabling us to participate in connections between present and past works, and I'm excited to view upcoming curatorial projects including Lisa Yuskavage and an investigation into the history of tarot, centered on the 15th century Visconti Sforza Tarot Deck from the Morgan Library collection. Claire received a PhD in art history at Columbia University. She has served as a curatorial fellow at MoMA and has taught art history and critical theory at Columbia University and the Center for Curatorial Studies at Bard College. I think Claire is one of the most interesting curators in action, and I can't wait to see what unfolds through her continued contribution to the art dialogue in the upcoming years. Hi, Claire. It's lovely to speak with you today.
Hi, Emily. So nice to speak with you as well.
So I was thinking about our conversation and how I could find a through line or something to anchor it. I wrote this sentence down, and I don't want it to be in any way reductive of what you do, but Claire Gilman is taking care of drawings and is presenting the practice of drawing to the public. And I thought about this emphasis on taking care, which the Latin root of curator is curare. And I was wondering what you feel about your role as a curator. And more specifically, and I don't know if you define yourself as a specific curator of drawings, but how that has situated itself in your life.
That's I love that statement. It's such a beautiful statement. I love the idea of curating as a form of caretaking of objects. And, there's an interesting question, for many reasons. I didn't start out, as a connoisseur of drawing. So my background was not in drawings per se. I did my dissertation on 1960s Italian art. I was always interested in drawing, but it wasn't the focus of what I did. So I came to, I think, be maybe a curator of drawings, and in all the ways that you're describing, when I came to the Drawing Center and through spending 14 years at the Drawing Center. And now I'm in a different position vis-a-vis drawings, by being at the Morgan, because one of the things, in my job at the Drawing Center. So I was always working with drawings. And in a sense, I would say that every exhibition I did was a way of, kind of caring for drawings in a sense, in terms of allowing them to show themselves in a way to their best advantage, or allowing them to kind of reveal what it is that drawings do or can do in the exhibitions that I put on, and also working with artists to allow them to, in a way, figure out what their drawing practice means to them. Because I think a lot of artists that I've worked with, and I think a lot of artists in general, it can often take them some time to realize that drawing is something, that their drawings are something of value. I think often artists will draw for many years and they won't think that those objects are worthy of being shown. And in a sense, when there will come a moment, either they come to this on their own, or sort of we come to it together, where they say, wow, I really think these objects are deserving of the care and the attention and the visibility that my work in painting or in other media is deserving of. And so in bringing those objects, putting those objects on view, I am therefore kind of giving them that attention and value in a certain sense that maybe they haven't had before. But of course, at the Drawing Center, we don't have or we did not have a collection, or the Drawing Center does not have a collection, and so the kind of idea of curating was really limited to putting on exhibitions, right? Because we were not accepting drawings, into our institution to be looked after for, till the end of time, presumably. So that's a new dimension of my role now at the Morgan, which is really exciting, and it's something I'm just, starting to think about. I've only been at the Morgan now. I think it might be 5 months now. I started at the beginning of July. And so I'm only starting to think about how I want to build that collection, and what that means to take on an object and, have it be our responsibility in a certain sense. And that is something I'm thinking about very, with a lot of intention, both in terms of, am I taking this drawing into the museum and then will it never be seen again? Or, trying to bring objects in that I think, really thinking intentionally about how things relate to each other that are in the collection, building the collection in a way where I can envision presentations that can come out of that so that these objects can be seen, and that they aren't just kind of going in simply to sort of reside there. I think one of the great things about the Morgan is that we do have a very accessible policy for researchers and the general public. So pretty much anyone who wants to see a drawing can make an appointment and they can see it very, very, very easily. Actually, we have the Drawing Study Center. We take it out and anyone can see it. So that's a great thing actually about the Morgan. So we may not have as many opportunities to show our permanent collection as some other museums do, because we don't have a huge display of our permanent collection on view at any time. But we do have that opportunity. So yeah, I don't know if that I'm sure we'll say more about this, but that's my sort of my introduction to the idea of caring for objects and bringing them into the museum.
No, that's fantastic. I think I've got many questions from that. Something that I did want to ask and was curious about the Drawing Center is, did they acquire works? And I think that makes sense why the exhibitions were so diverse, is because you had so much freedom, I guess.
Yep.
If you have the collection, as you've just talked about, it's nice. And sometimes it's frustrating when you go to a institution or a museum and they've got an artwork and it's not on view. It's very hard to see what's available. But having said that, I think the Morgan, and maybe I don't fully understand, but I feel they have an excellent programming of exhibitions. But are all of these from the collection, or do they bring in works from loans just to present work?
Yes. So they do. They do the variety of exhibitions. I do think, you know, there in the past, and again, it sort of depends on all the different departments because we have such a broad range of departments, um, whose focus, is very, very different. Like putting on an exhibition that's coming out of the literary and historical manuscripts department is very different than one coming out of modern contemporary or coming out of drawings. So we definitely do exhibitions that are loan and entirely loan exhibitions. I'm working on an exhibition coming up, um, which actually did come out of a collection item. So it's a show, um, about tarot, and I'm working on modern contemporary artists. We're working on tarot, but it came out of the fact that we have one of the oldest Renaissance tarot decks, most complete Renaissance tarot decks, the Visconti Sforza Tarot Deck.
Amazing.
So there will be a Renaissance tarot show accompanying it, but the modern contemporary portion is almost 98% loans. So we do exhibitions that are loan based. But we also do definitely do exhibitions that are that are geared towards concentrations in our collection, or featuring our collection. And I think one of the reasons we do that is because we don't really have like a permanent collection galleries. We don't have those. We have the library, and we do put rotations of objects on display in the library. We put objects in cases on display throughout the museum, but we don't have a permanent collection gallery. So doing exhibitions that will draw on our permanent collection is obviously something that is an important part of what we do. So, often it will be, we have a strength in something, and we will do a show that builds on that, but we'll also bring in loans. And then if we've received a recent gift, we will do sort of an exhibition featuring that gift. So that might be a case where it's entirely works from our collection, or that will be joining the collection. And then sometimes we do collection shows. But I would say, so it's really a mix of all of those things. And I think that being at the drawing center, I have kind of a different skill set, or I'm bringing a different skill set to the Morgan, because I am used to doing shows that are entirely loan based, right? That, as you say, kind of don't have that restriction that comes with basing it on something that is in our collection or will be joining our collection. So I'm trying to bring more of that to the Morgan, and definitely working on upcoming exhibitions that are not rooted in the collection. At the same time, it's exciting for me to be able to work with a permanent collection, which was not something I was able to do at the Drawing Center, and I had to find kind of different ways of doing that, and I did, bringing in collections and working with those collections, but so it's, for me, I think it was great to have that freedom of being at the Drawing Center for those years. And I'm so thankful and grateful for what I was able to do there. But it's also a new challenge and really stimulating to be in a different context of the Morgan.
So you were at the Drawing Center, you started as a curator, you completed a PhD in art history, and then you were a curator at the Drawing Center and then ended being chief curator. So I guess you had a lot of freedom and very experimental. If I could think of the Drawing Center, it started in the 70s as this downtown Soho space for drawings, focused on drawings, at a time when Soho was very, I don't even think you could live in Soho at that time.
I think artists had studios
Yeah,
there.
but they were not
Yeah.
meant to legally live there or
Right,
something
right,
like
right.
that. And so I guess you've come from this very experimental place, and now you've maybe gone to the older brother or sister to the Morgan and shifting that. And so I understand that there's maybe this interest to develop and change your practice, but how are you approaching curatorial practice at the Drawing Center, and
Mhm.
How do you think it will change now being at the Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. And I can definitely give, some thoughts about that. I think, one thing I will say is it's quite intuitive for me. It's not that I've sat there and said, okay, well, this is what I'll do at the drawing center, and now this is what I'm going to do at the Morgan.
Sure.
It's I think, far more intuitive than that. And it will start by thinking, this is something that makes sense at the drawing center, and this but doesn't at the Morgan, and this is something that makes sense at the Morgan but maybe didn't make sense at the drawing center. And then I can sort of analyze that and think about, well, why is that? Why, really break that down, and try to understand it. But it starts, I think, from a more intuitive place. I think, just, very generally speaking, at the drawing center, I think, when thinking about what kinds of exhibitions make sense there, I think we tended to think about shows that were a bit more experimental, in terms of, not in terms of their ideas, or what I mean, or anything like that, but more are under artists who are not known, perhaps, or more an aspect of an artist's practice that was totally unknown. So, thinking about the Cecily Brown show that I did, Cecily is obviously a very known figure, but no one knew her drawing practice when I did that show. So that was sort of a great show for the drawing center, because it was really highlighting, I think, very, very focused on what drawing is, what drawing means. Showing that was a way of really highlighting a very specific role for drawing, which for Cecily was drawing as a way of sort of figuring out what it was that she wanted to see or wanted to look at. And it enabled people to understand then her painting process much better. And so it was really about, here's a new way of understanding what drawing is and what drawing can do, in a certain sense. So I think we were always thinking about that. And also, because the drawing center is small, what is it that we can do that maybe a gallery is not going to do, or a bigger museum is not going to do? So it was always like, where can we fit in that we can, in a way, do this best, I guess. And I think we were also a bit, we had to be mindful. I mean, you have to be mindful everywhere of budgets, but we always tried to think about the show from the budget perspective very early on. Is this show reasonable? So a lot of times it would be work either that was coming from just like a handful of collections, 2 or 3 collections. There were very few occasions where we would do a show where we were just taking, loaning objects from all over the place. It always started with, okay, this is a body of work that we can manage to sort of put on view easily. And so it was, in a way, it was very challenging, because you were always having to think about all of these different things, and can this work, and can we do this? And so, and having to be really, really creative in thinking about, oh, this is something that a bigger institution is not going to do. So there was always a great challenge in thinking about what was a show that made sense at the drawing center. And I think at the Morgan, there's a little bit more freedom there. In a way, you can do that, certainly, but there's also, I think, one can just say, okay, I want to show this artist's drawings because these are great drawings, and that's what I want to do. And it doesn't have to be so kind of carefully thought out that this is something, in a way, that only this institution can do. So, I don't know if that makes sense, but I think, so that's kind of very generally. I think when I'm thinking about things for the Morgan right now, I really am thinking about how to bring a contemporary voice to a place that is so steeped in tradition. And so that's in a way what's motivating me at the moment. So with the tarot exhibition, that's a perfect example. That was actually something, a show that I was thinking about when I was at the Drawing Center. I had gotten interested in modern and contemporary artists dealing with tarot, but I thought this is not the right show for the Drawing Center, because in a way that needs the weight of history, because otherwise it might feel kind of gimmicky, and I didn't want it to feel that way. So when I came to the Morgan, that was one of the first shows I thought of, because I thought, okay, wow, this is the perfect place to do this, because we can show that older tarot deck, and we can explore the roots of this, of this practice of tarot, and give it that historical weight, so that one can see, wow, this is not just some, a thing that whimsy that, that artists are sort of taking up on a whim, but that this is something that goes way back in time and artists have been thinking about for centuries. So that is a perfect example of a show that for me makes sense at the Morgan and not at the Drawing Center. Another show that I'm doing, even sooner than that show, is I'm doing a show of drawings of Lisa Yuskavage, and that is opening in 6 months' time. And I don't know, like, could I have done that show at the Drawing Center? I suppose I could have. But there's something really exciting to me about doing that show at the Morgan, because Lisa is, again, someone who is, people may or may not realize this. I think if you're familiar with her work, you would realize this. She's very, very steeped in tradition. She's a real, master of her materials.
Sure, her paintings are stunning.
Yes, and her drawings are equally stunning and not as known. So this show will be entirely drawings, and it will have drawings in all media. But I think that putting that at the Morgan is exciting, not just because, wow, that's cool that the Morgan is showing Lisa Yuskavage, which is cool because they've never done that before, and there's going to be some provocative work on the wall, so that's exciting. But I think just also because one will then see, it kind of gives her that historical weight, that one can see, wow, just by putting her there, she is able, her work is at the level of being worthy of the Morgan. Not everyone's work is that good, but she is that good. And she is in dialogue with, Renaissance painters, and she knows her stuff. And you can see that in her work. And I think that will become evident just by virtue of the fact that that's at the Morgan.
That's very exciting to hear, because I did just assume the Morgan would be very conservative in its scope of what it can present. And I think one of the things at the Drawing Center that was exciting is this non-artist kind of works you were doing, incarcerated artists. And one that I loved was the Tommy Ungara drawings, which was so fantastic. And so to be able to translate that to the Morgan, which is another collection that I was recently there and I saw the Belle de Costa Green and the illuminated manuscripts. And so those manuscripts are just, they have such an amazing collection at the Morgan.
Yeah.
And it has been developed so well, then to be able to access that and have those tarots. Like, I have a Nikki Saint Dephile tarot deck.
Oh, you do? Oh,
yeah,
my
I
gosh.
bought one earlier this year, actually.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And so, yeah, to see something very medieval, or it will just be amazing to reflect on that, because I do think it can become a bit kitsch if it's just a modern, here's modern day artists doing tarot, but it is a very steeped practice.
Yes.
Even more so then than it is now,
Yes, no, completely. So, I feel like it has not been, I have not had any sense from being here that it is a conservative institution. So that is really exciting. Nothing, none of that. I have been my ideas have been absolutely embraced, and people seem excited to, to put on these contemporary shows. I think, I think people might have the impression it's conservative just because, we do have a big renaissance. We do we are more weighted towards historical work in our departments than we are towards modern contemporary. We just have a sort of greater depth in older art in a way. But I think when it comes to, but I think everyone has been absolutely receptive to exhibitions that make those relationships between historical work and contemporary work, or that are just featuring, um, you know, issues that are important to contemporary artists.
So you'll be now building the collection of modern drawings.
Yeah.
That's so both curating exhibitions and then focusing on acquisitions. And then I was curious about your own practice of research. And do you apply that through the preparation of exhibitions, or do you have your own investigations that you're looking at while you're there, or just in your work in general?
Do you mean am I work researching things that don't have to do with the exhibitions I'm doing,
Yeah.
or what is my process in terms of?
Well, not to do with the exhibitions, but maybe I think there's this balance of your own personal interest and then presenting an exhibition that is on behalf of the Morgan Library.
Mhm.
Or do you channel your research interests into an exhibition and that's just the privilege of being in that
Yeah.
room?
I mean, I love to do things outside of the Morgan, or outside of whatever institution I'm in. And I've had a, great opportunities to do that. Both at the drawing center and also at the Morgan. I think both institutions are very open to doing projects outside of the institution, and I do really enjoy doing that. It's just sort of, that is a matter of time. I have less time to do that now because I'm getting adjusted to this new role. But I guess one, research interest of mine, so it's something that I've done. I've done a lot of, is, as I think I mentioned this. My dissertation was on 1960s Italian art, on arte povera, on three artists associated with that, but actually artists not in sort of the traditional vein, but artists who are engaging with theatricality and artifice and fiction, and thinking about that in relationship to specifically Rome in the 1960s and the legacy of fascism. Um, and so I've done a lot of writing and curating outside of both institutions on that subject, on that period. So I'm fortunate to be able to, you know, be able to do that, because there isn't as much opportunity to work on that period, when you're dealing with drawings. Not that there aren't wonderful drawings from those artists, but that's not really what I was sort of looking at in
Yeah,
relationship
it's
to
much
those
different.
artists.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of an outside thing that I've continued to do all these years. Most recently, I organized a show in Italy on an artist named Emilio Iskro. But it's something that I'm always working on. But then, I also love to write on contemporary artists. I'm always doing that. And that's would be something outside of the work that I do here. But I think, I do take whatever exhibition I'm doing very, very seriously. So it does take up most of my time. And actually, that's something I really like doing. I don't think I'm a curator that, I know there are certain curators who they're very there's some very specific and sort of focused topic that they're interested in, and that, all their work kind of builds to that one topic and in different ways. And I think that that's absolutely amazing. I think I'm less like that in the sense that I really like to take on, um, I'm very open to the different kinds of subjects and topics that interest me. I mean, certainly there are through lines through them all that I could, tell you that I could draw out, because obviously I'm interested in certain things for a certain reason, and I'm not definitely not interested in other things. I'm interested in everything. But so if I'm taking on a topic, I really want to learn about that. And sometimes I've taken on topics I know nothing about. So for instance, at the Drawing Center, I recently did a show of Khalil Gibran, the drawings of the writer Khalil Gibran. I didn't know anything about Khalil Gibran when I started that show. And I really can sort of proudly say that at the end of that show, and really it was just myself and our curatorial associate, Isabella Kapoor. And then we had a wonderful woman named Annika Lenson, who's a professor at Berkeley, who's a specialist in from the Arab world from that period, who was sort of a sort of advisor on that project, who speaks Arabic and who was able to translate the Arabic for us. That was it. Those are the only people working on that show. And we now, I feel like if anyone needs to know anything about Gibran, I could safely say I am certainly in the English language expert on Gibran. I didn't know anything. So we went deep into that and really researched it. And that show was not just his drawings; it was full of archival material. I don't know if you saw that show,
No,
but
I did.
we deeply researched that moment in history, his peers. And so I really like doing that. And for tarot, it's the same thing. Again, that's another example of a show where I am not an expert in tarot. I don't know anything about tarot. I didn't come to this because I've been interested in tarot my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I've never even had a full tarot reading, which is something I probably need to do because I need to understand how it works. But I've never had that. So, this is again, it's now there's certain artists in the show and certain periods that I do know something about, but that's a complete learning process. It's learning something new, and diving deep into it, and doing the best I can do within the time frame that I have. And as long as I feel like I've given my all to it in the time that I have, then I know that will come through, and people will see the kind of research and thought that went into it. I think it's really important that people see that investment. And so no, I have to be deeply invested in everything that I do. I don't just say, oh, okay, I found the artist, because you could do that, I guess, and put them up, and maybe it would all come across to the public in the same way. But for me, it's to deeply,
Yeah, the research is important for you.
yeah.
And I was thinking about that because you in a way acquire this lovely base of knowledge about, as you were just saying, an artist. And
Mm-hmm.
I notice in my own behaviors, I'm going to shows and there's so many galleries and I'm downtown and I have 5 shows to see. I tend to float through them and I'm not really developing. I was just recently going in more deeply about an artist and I realized that I'd been to their show a few months ago, but I'd totally misunderstood what the artist was or what the artist was thinking about, and that's really important for me. And so I'm trying to pay attention more to just being absorbed in a show, but also there's this part of, and I wanted to ask you how you consider educating and documenting the work, because you do have so much knowledge, but there's only so much you can
Yep.
see aside from the materiality of looking at the work, which is also incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That's captivating in itself, but then there's really sometimes only a blurb at the start of an exhibition or something to get to know who the artist is or what the collection is about.
Yep. No, that's a really, really good point. And I have to say, I also do the same thing as you. We don't have time to go see all these shows that are there. We just don't. I'm a much better viewer of art when I'm not in New York City. Then I actually really do spend time in exhibitions because I'm away from the normal demands of my work schedule or my personal life. So I can just go and see art. And that's where I most enjoy seeing art, because that's where I'm there to do that. And then I find I really do absorb. So that gives me hope, I think, in a way that we are capable of doing it. It's just that in New York City, it's very hard because you're running. What do you have? You're like, okay, I have like 40 minutes before I get to this meeting. I better go run and see that. So you're just not. Yeah. So, it is hard. So I think what I try and do, and so again, I'll bring up the Khalil Gibran show because I think this is a good example, is to provide sort of multiple entry points into a show depending on what the visitor wants. So in that show, I really, I sort of created, I think, a show within a show in a sense. So on the outer walls were drawings by Gibran without a huge amount of wall text. And that was organized basically chronologically. And the idea there was just to give visitors who really just wanted to come in and look at the work and to have a full aesthetic experience, right? And not have to sort of be constantly coming up against text and labels and that they feel that they need to read. So that was kind of one, in a way, you could do the tour of the outer walls of the drawing center and have a full aesthetic experience and leave. And then I had a center wall, and on that wall, I had portraits that Gibran had done during his life. And then I had a group of vitrines around that wall. And in those each of those vitrines was dedicated to a specific subject. So one was dedicated to sort of religion, spirituality. One was dedicated to history and sort of social political context. One was dedicated to I think it was exclusively dedicated to Mary Haskell, who was this patron that Gibran worked with, and one was dedicated to language. And those vitrines were where I put the bulk of the archival material and the explanatory material, and a lot of didactics, a lot of text, and also on that wall there was a lot of text. So there was a real opportunity there, and we also had an audio component where we invited an actor, a Palestinian actor who was very passionate about Gibran, Adam Bakri, to read aloud some of his letters, which were in the vitrines. So that was an opportunity for people who wanted to get more deeply immersed in the history to do that there. But they really existed sort of alongside each other. And so that was kind of, and then there was a reading room downstairs. And in the reading room, we had all different kinds of books about Gibran, both books by Gibran and about Gibran. And if so, that was another opportunity if people wanted to spend time. So my hope with that was that it provided opportunities to people seeking different things where you could feel comfortable taking whatever path you wanted to take. And so I think that's kind of what I'm always trying to do is I don't want the show to be dependent on didactics. It needs to stand alone visually, but I also want to offer those didactics for those people who want them. And then, of course, the same thing extends to the catalog, right? That's another resource which you can partake of or not, depending on how deeply you want to get engaged in the work. And then, of course, the public programs is another opportunity for people to get engaged.
Does the Morgan do public programming? Or
yes,
they do.
Yes, we do a lot of public programming. Yeah, a lot.
I've never been to a lecture. I mean, I go to a lot of the exhibitions, but I've never been to any dialogue.
Yeah, we do. We do a lot of public programs, a whole range of public programs from lectures to conversations to other kinds of things. I think doing artist walkthroughs is a little harder at the Morgan because the spaces are they're small, they're narrower. They don't easily accommodate like tours through the shows as easily as the drawing center does, because the drawing center is such this big open space. So that I'm sort of trying to figure out how to do that. Like I'd love to do a walkthrough of Lisa's show with Lisa, but hers is in a smaller gallery, and there's no way you could really do that. So it's sort of trying to figure out how to do something like that.
Maybe in that center.
Yeah.
And have a slideshow or something and not moving people around.
Yes, we're actually talking about that. We do have an auditorium downstairs, but it's very, it feels very academic. It's more austere. It has a very steep slope, so it's great for certain things. But I feel we're thinking about doing a conversation in the auditorium, I mean, in the atrium, to give it a more, a little more, to lighten the feel a little bit.
I do think that is an opportunity to get to know more. I went to the Jack Shear tours when you had that exhibition at the Drawing Centre, which was such a wonderful collection of work.
Amazing. And I love doing that.
But that tour then of having Jack talk about
Yeah.
the drawings, it just gave that different dimension. And then I think it just gave me access. You were talking about those access points. Then I could access the show, and
Yep.
that was kind of an interesting thing because you did it in parts, and then you wanted to go back to the first part, but you couldn't because it was
Yes,
finished. And
No, I think tours are amazing, and I agree with you. I think I absorb a show the best when I have a tour, because then you kind of are forced to just. And it's not that you need the tour. I really think this is more on us than it is on the show, but it's that then you kind of, your mind shuts off and you focus on what is being delivered to you. Whereas I think the problem when one's, as I said, when you're working and you run out to see a show, is your mind does not shut off. And, I find this happening to me a lot, and I'm in a show and I just am, oh my God, I haven't even been looking at what's on the wall. I've been thinking about this other thing I have to do.
yeah,
When I get back to the
and I
office.
think it's our lifestyle. Yeah.
So that's the challenge. So some of it is on whoever's putting the exhibition together, but some of it is on us to say, okay, we're here. Let's shut off the brain,
Pay attention.
and try and focus, on this opportunity we have to spend this time.
I was at the Morgan last week, and it was packed. Like, I had to do 3 rounds really, because you couldn't really stand and look at something for a long time because people were.
Was that the Friday night? Was that a free Friday night?
I think it was building up to the Friday
Okay.
night, so I feel like it was already busy.
Yeah.
But also I think, MoMA is so busy, and the Met, everything it's full, and these public institutions are actively presenting work to a public, and you found yourself in these public spaces. I was wondering how you see that role. Do you see it as education? Are you seeing it as an opportunity to show your presentation of work? Or were you motivated to specifically work in public institutions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really, there's a lot of questions in there, I think. A lot of,
and I know public institutions are also complicated.
Well, just to get to the crowded nature of things, and the accessibility aspect of that, it's really tough. I mean, we do have this free Friday night, which is great. Not all institutions do seem to have a free night, which kind of surprised me. But then, of course, what happens is on that free night, it becomes incredibly crowded, like you just said. So it's it's harder to see things on that free night. I think it would be great. I mean, the Drawing Center was completely free, so that was amazing. They were able to get a grant to do that. I don't know where that conversation stands at the Morgan. That's not something I've been able to engage in yet. But I would be very interested to know if there's any discussion about having another free night or something like that. I don't know that it could go completely free, or if that's a goal to be completely free. We do also have a free Sunday. I think it's a free Sunday for college students, which is great, and a sort of free opportunities for students. So I apologize for the phone ringing in the background. Anyway, so yes, this is definitely a challenge, and was not a challenge that I faced at the Drawing Center, both because we were free, so that accessibility piece was there, and we just never got, like, that's one of the wonderful things about the Drawing Center is it didn't get crowded. Like, we had healthy crowds, but it was always a you could go there and you could really see what you were looking at, and
you could also go back freely, I think,
yes,
which was nice.
Yes,
you could go and then I'll just go see that one piece again.
That's true. That's actually a really good point. And so I guess this is where the larger museums develop these membership programs. Because you can go back multiple times. But it's definitely something that's important to me. I do think most of our programming at the Morgan is free. So that is another way that you can come to the museum for free, is if you go to a program. Not all of the programs are free, but I think a lot of them are free. So that's another point where you can come in. Um, and I think there were some other questions in your question that I'm not remembering. Oh, why a public
Well,
institution?
about the role of art as an access for public to experience and be educated by art, and the role of art just in a wider role in society.
Right, right. I mean,
Because I think in the gallery, for example, a commercial gallery is set up to sell an artwork,
right.
and there's this monetary exchange involved. And so, while I guess there's exchange in different ways, like ticket entry and things like that, the art is there to see.
Right.
And I'm wondering if that's the only purpose of it, or like, how do you? Is that important for you as a curator to educate and provide
Okay.
access to different ways of thinking about art or works that you're
hmm
discovering?
hmm yeah, I mean, I think it is important. I think, again, I would say that it starts a little bit more intuitively, not thinking, I don't kind of sit there and think, um, all right, this is an artist I think the public should know. It doesn't start there for me. It would start more, this is an artist that I am deeply interested in. And then the question would be, is that something that I think should be brought into the world as well? There's certain artists that I'm deeply interested that I wouldn't think about doing a show of, because I don't think that they are speaking to relevant issues at the moment, or there's any number of reasons I think why an artist deserves to be shown, whether it is that they are speaking to issues of concern at the moment, or whether it's that they are revealing something about the medium of drawing or about art making that maybe we we haven't thought about in this way before, or enabling us to see kind of connections between present and past that enable us to understand um, histories and how they develop. So I think there's a lot of different reasons. And again, I think it starts from a slightly more intuitive place. So I think the important thing is really for me to be in touch with what is happening, you know what I mean, at the moment, and the issues that are relevant at the moment. And then from there, hopefully the things that I am invested in will be things that other people are too, because there's a reason that I am. And I think the best shows start from that place where the person who's bringing that show to view is deeply invested in it. And I think if that person is deeply invested in it, that will show, right? That will translate. And then hopefully other people will feel that and understand that. Again, Gibran is another case. Like, this is someone I don't think any other museum would have done that show. That really was a very off the beaten path show. But I thought there was something really important in his work to say about diasporic communities, about the role of spirituality as a kind of unifier. I just thought there was a lot in his work that resonated with a lot of things people are thinking about today. Um, but from within the perspective of the art world, I was always kind of nervous when I put that art. People are going to look at this and say,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, what is this stuff?" But I think I avoided that that therefore required me. It was necessary for me to do such deep research so that it could not be argued with. When that was on view, like, that it could not be argued with, because people would see, wow, there is a depth here, and there is something really important here, even if it's not to my aesthetic liking or whatever, and even if it's not something I've been thinking about. Now I see. So I don't know where I've gone with this, or where we
No,
started, but
I think that's interesting, because I wonder, did that trust develop over time, that trust in yourself to
Mhm.
execute an idea?
Yep.
And um, you're now in a position where you can, and I completely agree, having that research base and committing yourself fully to it and being confident in your own voice, that you're really just putting it out there, and however people receive it, it's like making an artwork. You can't really control that
That's absolutely right.
feedback or response.
Yeah, I do feel like when I am curating, I am making an artwork in a certain
Mm,
sense. I do feel that the show is itself a work of art, and that's very important to me. That the show as a whole have an aesthetic, that people can have an aesthetic appreciation of the show, not just of the individual works that they're looking at, and that the show is there to complement those works, not to upstage, in any way. It's so not that the work is the most important thing, but it is also putting an experience together that translates and kind of moves people. I definitely am still nervous every time I do a show. So I don't know that
good.
I've developed that confidence. I feel like I've just kind of worked through against and through the nerves. I mean, I've definitely done weird things as a curator. So, even the Tommy Unger is another case. It's sort of who else is doing that? I mean, at a major art museum, you know what I mean? I could see it at sort of the Museum of Illustration or something, or Children's Book Museum. But I just have fought against those feelings every time, and pushed through. But it's definitely nerve wracking every time that's, someone is going to say, why is this being? So, I think it's, if you're sticking to the tried and true, um, then you're going to have less of that anxiety. But yeah, it's just something, I guess I just, I mean, and I don't pursue everything. Like, there's certain
Mm.
things that, as I said, I think, maybe that's not for to do, but you've got to, again, commit to it when you have it, and show why it's meaningful to you, and then hope that it will be meaningful to other people too.
Do you have a dialogue or a critical conversation with your peers, or you will, especially with the Morgan, you'll have a like critical review or editorial that comes back, but is
Mm.
there an opportunity for you to receive feedback in in a constructive way of how people are responding, or or do you not pay attention, or like where does that fit in? You've got a group you're working with developing the show initially.
Yeah. I don't think there's as much opportunity for that as one would want, in a way, often, because it's just, things have to move so quickly, and there's just
Mm-hmm.
so much to do, that there's less of an opportunity to sit back and have that, really. I mean, I seek it, I guess, if I have specific questions. I was able to have that quite a bit with Laura Hopman, director at the Drawing Center. That was really great. I would, talk through all those things with her, and here, I'm doing the same. It's a little different because here, um, I am sort of the person here who is most steeped in modern and contemporary art, maybe more contemporary. There are other curators here in other departments also, but so, it's seeking, but that's been actually, and I was sort of concerned about that a little bit, or I'm not going to have people I can discuss things with, but that actually hasn't proved to be the case, and actually having people in other disciplines has been amazing as well. I've really loved that. Um, so, but I think that's something I want more of, and I always value those times when, there's a convening of curators or whatever, just to have those opportunities to discuss things, because I do feel we can get, maybe in the bigger museums where you have lots of peers who are in your field, you have more of that. I have had less of that because I've been in institution at the Drawing Center where it's very small. It's just me and maybe our curatorial associate and Laura, who I would, and here it's also in a sense small in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
modern contemporary. So it can be a little, you can be a little alone in that. But so you have to kind of go out and seek it, I guess, or
Sure.
I've had to. Yeah.
Mm. Did you intend on being a curator, or what was your moment where you sort of went, "Oh, that's a possibility, and I want to pursue that"?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of unique in the sense that I really have always known I wanted to be a curator. I don't even know like how. I mean, it just very gradually at each stage developed. I was interested in art and drawing when I was young. And I remember I had this book that I don't know if you had this book, but this Dr. Seuss book, my book about me. And it had these, you would circle what it is, had different words, what it is you want to be. And so I circled, and that was like when I was 9, I think I circled artist and educator or teacher or
Nice.
whatever it was, because there was no curator. That was not one of the words. So I think in that moment, I was trying to kind of craft what I thought a curator would be. And then as I grew up and I started to understand that that was a option, and I took art history in high school, and then I did major in art history in college, and I did start sort of doing interning when I was in college, and then interned at the Whitney for a year while I was applying to graduate school, and then went to graduate school. So it was a pretty unbroken trajectory. And that's not to say that that's the only way to do it. I think that's actually pretty uncommon. It just happened to be my the way I did it, my path. So
It seems though you have been, or maybe you were always like this, but it seems you've found this very unique path to maybe in comparison to a more conservative role of a curator.
hmm hmm
You've kind of picked up these, like, I feel that the drawing center would have just been an incredible opportunity
yeah,
to grow and develop and build your own identity as a curator, as opposed to being forced into the expectation or voice of an institution.
I think you're absolutely right. And I feel so, so fortunate for that, because it really wasn't, so that would be, have been a surprise, I guess, to me, because I never thought about that. I always thought, oh, I'll be at MoMA, like everyone thinks, because that's the institution I knew, and I didn't know the drawing center was. So I actually did start at MoMA as a curatorial assistant. I was there for 3 years, and I think when you're at MoMA, you kind of get in this bubble and you start to think, oh, there's no other place. You have to be at MoMA. And I didn't really want to leave, but when I was there at the time, um, there was like sort of this 3 year term limit on curatorial assistants. And so it was sort of the end of those 3 years, and they were like, okay, it's time to go. And there were other reasons why it made sense for me to go. I actually was pregnant with twins at that time too, and I just finished my dissertation. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going, and with nothing, and I actually worked independently for 4 years, and then the drawing center came along. And I have to say, I'm so, so appreciative of the drawing center. It is such a wonderful institution, and everything that you say, I think, is true. It allowed me such freedom, such independence, the ability to do whatever I wanted to do without the pressure of a collection, without the pressure of external demands from the board or anything like that. And so it did give me the confidence to bring that to my next job. And I do feel like the Morgan is really like such a wonderful next step for me, because I don't know. I suppose I could go to MoMA or a place like that and be in a very much bigger structure, much more hierarchical. But the Morgan is still, I really do appreciate, the Morgan is still very small and very intimate. So it's bigger than the Drawing Center, and we have this amazing collection, but it's still really, intimate and small, and we're all kind of working together. And so I do feel, yeah. And I stayed at the drawing center for 14 years because I did really, really appreciate what I had there. And I wasn't sure I'd be able to have that anywhere else. I was very, apprehensive about leaving the drawing center, even though, there's a part of you that thinks, oh, you want to take on a new challenge. I was really apprehensive that I would not be able to have that creativity and that freedom that I had there. And so I guess I waited. And then this opportunity came along, and it felt like, okay, this is the right opportunity. This is the opportunity where I can do some new things, but still maintain, a lot of the, creativity that I had at the drawing center. And so I do feel like that's proving to be the case. So far.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. The drawing center, I think, is such a special
Yeah.
place. It bolstered my trust in drawing as an artist, and drawing can be so hidden by this preparatory material or process to develop another work, and drawing is in fact a real and
Yes.
wonderful thing. And that dialogue that you are really behind, and you're not always sort of up the front presenting that because the exhibition is where it speaks. But hearing that you went to the Morgan, it was very exciting, because I think the Morgan is in itself such a eclectic collection,
Yes.
and it's one of the places I regularly go to, even though it does have that little collection, that room at the back, um, with some of the objects. To think that you can go into the collection and pull out a piece of work and then build an exhibition from that
Yeah,
must be a lovely trajectory to have something to anchor into and to work with,
it
in
is.
building a new way of working. And I think we all need to develop, and I'm sure you would have done incredible exhibitions at the Drawing Centre had you stayed. But sometimes it's nice to grow and just force ourselves into new situations that
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was
can bring
hard.
new work.
It's
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
leave because
Yeah,
I
that was the question I was going to
oh,
ask.
it's
Would it
so
be
hard to
hard
leave.
to
I
leave?
love the drawing center. I love them. They're like a family to me. I mean, I adore them. I adore the people. I adore the place. But I needed to do it. I needed to do it. It was sort of like, okay, I could continue doing these shows, and they'd be, and like you said, I'm sure I'd do some wonderful shows, but I did feel that feeling, that sort of comes where it was just like, I want a new, I don't want to sort of this be the last place, this is just it. I want another chapter and another, um, another thing. And, and this really did work out well. But I think, I guess that's what I would say to other curators too, is just don't, take your time. You don't need to be rushing from thing to thing. Take your time, develop, build, something at the institution where you are, what that particular institution has to offer you, explore that. um, but yeah, I think for me, also being at the Morgan was really exciting because I am a modern and contemporary person, obviously. I mean, curator, but I'm really a lover of art history from the, the beginning of time to the present moment. And so that for me was really exciting, to go to an institution that has objects, that we have these Mesopotamian seals,
Mm.
and going all
Yeah,
the way
that's
up.
what I love.
And I'm also a lover, as you know. I mean, two of the shows we've mentioned, the Tommy Unger and the Gibran show, are both based are shows of writers. I'm also a real lover of literature. So to be able to be, an institution where we have, these Milton's Parrot, the only, I think, surviving handwritten copy of Milton's Paradise Lost, and that's just so incredible, and artists are so excited to work with that material. So yeah, so that feels very exciting to me. I get, in a way, more excited by thinking about relationships between history and the present than just sitting in the present.
Mm.
And it's fun to walk into that space and those rooms.
Sure.
It's pretty amazing.
Is their collection at the Morgan Library space?
It is. It's all downstairs. Yeah, we have a
Okay.
vault with three
Wow.
levels, so everything is here. Yeah, everything is
There's
here.
always rumors of where the vaults are.
Yeah, it's amazing. Everything is here, and as I said, anyone can see, can request to see anything. It's actually
Yeah, I
very,
wasn't aware of that. I think
yeah,
that's fantastic.
yeah. So we have people coming into the Drawing Study Center to look at things all the time.
So I ask everyone this question, and it can be related to art or life. What do you celebrate?
Oh wow, that's such a good question. Oh my gosh, I think I celebrate creativity and connection and um, and you know friendship and and joy. I guess I would say those things. I mean, I feel like the connection between people, between individuals, like the deep human connection that we forge with each other, especially when we are dealing with artistic objects. I think that's one of the great, and it's not just art. I mean, not just visual art. It happens through books, in sharing a book that you love with someone, or in sharing an art object, or sharing anything, a music, a work, piece of music. There's a way in which, when we're dealing with something as intimate as art, that is like an expression of the self, and when you're sharing that with someone else, it's just such a profound emotional experience. And I think that's why one of my favorite things to do is to work with living artists. I mean, it's absolutely something I enjoy. So it gives me such energy. And so, yeah, I celebrate working with artists, and I think the relationships that I have forged with artists are some of the most intimate and connected, because you are giving them, when you're doing the show, right, you are giving them something so meaningful. It is so meaningful for an artist to be able to show their work in an institution like the Morgan or the Drawing Center. So, and they are giving you something so meaningful. They are allowing you to put on view this very intimate material that is their own. And so I think that connection that happens is really, really profound, and you develop a just a deep appreciation for each other, and a kind of very deep affection. So I have to say, I've not had a negative experience working with an artist. No, I can't, not one. I've had negative experiences working with other kinds of individuals, but you know, and certainly some have been more profound experiences than others, but all have been very, 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 like, I've grown tremendously through engaging with another individual in that way. And so I think I celebrate that human connection through works of art.
The word that came to mind was resonance. Like you've met on a intuitive level that's not necessarily described. And I think it's a great privilege for artists that you put in the time and research to look into their work. And completely agree that a curator's role is a work of art and they are producing their own body of work, but an artist and a curator need to exist with each other.
Yeah.
And I don't think either one is more important than the other. And it's about building, like, it's forming that relationship and sharing a point of view. And it's a really lovely space to be in, because with the work that you're doing, you can't not connect with either a person or the artist that was there.
Yeah.
So you, in any way that you're investigating a work, you're getting to know a person and about their life. And
Right. Yeah. And I think when you asked about like who you kind of get feedback from, I mean, often that's also one of the reasons I like working with an artist, because then you have each other. They want um your feedback, right? And you want theirs. So that's that's sort of the great, a great way to develop something is through conversation. Well, I think this worked, or maybe this does, but and that's something you guys can develop together. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's about developing that shared relationship and figuring out what is the right way to work together. And it can be different with each partnership, but it should
sure.
always be a way of working together in some way, you know.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's also
a level of communication. You're also required to be a communicator.
Yes.
And work with the artist. It's not a solitary practice in any way.
No, it's not. But I found, yeah, I mean, it does require you to adapt yourself to what the artist's communication style is. Um, but that's what you need to do, figure out how they
Human
communicate.
relationships.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's relationship. Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure to speak with you, and I really appreciate that you've taken the time out of your day.
Oh, thank you so much for reaching out to me. It's great to have that opportunity.
I think it's really nice because I've known your work, but I don't really know much about who you are apart from,
Right.
a bio. And so it's really nice to have that dialogue and hear more deeply about what you're thinking about and how you're approaching your work. So you've got shows coming up.
So June 2026 is Lisa's show. And then, no, June 2025 is Lisa's show. And the tarot show is June 2026. Yeah.
Good luck with preparing that. I'm really looking forward to seeing your work at the Morgan. I think it will be an exciting period. And they're lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so nice of you to say.
So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Emily. It was really lovely speaking with you.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for listening to We Are Art People. You can listen to full episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We are online at www.weareartpeople.com. Sign up to our newsletter for show updates and happenings, and please share with someone who may enjoy listening. See you next time.